Sarah Martinez stared at her phone screen, watching the family group chat light up with excitement. Her younger sister Emma had just gotten engaged, and everyone was planning a surprise celebration at the Grand Oak Hall downtown. The messages came flooding in, Mom asking about decorations, Dad arranging the catering, cousins promising to bring their famous homemade cake. "Can't wait to see everyone there," typed her brother Miguel. "Sarah, you better not miss this one like you did." Christmas! Sarah's heart sank as she looked around her cramped hotel room in Bangkok. The mission briefing papers were scattered across the bed, and her laptop displayed classified satellite images of a remote facility in Myanmar. She worked for a humanitarian organization that investigated human trafficking networks, and this case was the biggest breakthrough they'd had in years. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to type "I'll be there," but the truth was different. Her team had just received intel about a major trafficking operation that was moving dozens of young women across the border. The window to act was closing fast, and she was the only operative in the region who could speak the local dialects fluently. "Something came up at work," she finally typed. "I'm so sorry, Em. I love you and can't wait to celebrate when I get back." The responses came quickly. Mom sent a crying emoji. Dad wrote, "Work again?" Emma's message hurt the most. "I understand, but I really hoped my big sister would be there for once." Sarah closed the chat and walked to the window. The Bangkok streets buzzed with evening traffic, street food vendors calling out to customers, and the normal chaos of city life. Meanwhile, somewhere not far from here, young women were being held against their will, waiting for someone to help them. She picked up her secure phone and dialed her handler, Agent Chen. "The family celebration is tomorrow night," she said without greeting. "I know this is hard, Martinez," Chen replied, "but we've been tracking this network for 2 years. The girls we identified are being moved tomorrow. If we miss this window, they disappear forever." Sarah nodded even though he couldn't see her. She'd joined this work after her college roommate vanished during a spring break trip to Mexico. Maria's family never got answers, never got closure. Sarah had promised herself she'd never let another family go through that pain if she could prevent it. "Send me the final coordinates," she said. "I'll be ready." That night, Sarah lay awake, thinking about Emma's engagement party. She imagined her sister in a beautiful dress surrounded by everyone she loved, cutting into that famous cake while Dad made embarrassing speeches. She pictured the empty chair where she should have been sitting. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mom. "We know your work is important, honey. Emma understands. But we miss you." Sarah typed back, "I miss you all too. More than you know." She didn't sleep much that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw 2 different images: her family celebrating without her, and the faces of the young women in the intelligence photos who were counting on her to find them. At dawn, she got dressed in local clothes and checked her equipment one last time. The tracking device, the emergency beacon, the small camera hidden in her jacket button. Her team was already at the staging area, going over the plan to infiltrate the trafficking route. As she left the hotel room, Sarah looked at one last family photo on her phone. Emma was laughing at something their cousin had said, surrounded by all the people who loved her. Sarah touched the screen gently. "I'll make this right," she whispered to the photo. "I'll come home to you all soon." She had no idea that in just a few hours her 2 worlds would collide in the most unexpected way possible. The mission she chose over her family would end up bringing armed forces right to their celebration, changing everything she thought she knew about the work she'd dedicated her life to. The elevator doors closed, and Sarah headed toward what she believed would be just another rescue operation. She couldn't have imagined that by the end of the day her family would be the ones needing rescue. The Grand Oak Hall sparkled with fairy lights and gold decorations as Emma Martinez Chen spun around in her engagement dress. Her fiancé, David, had insisted on the most beautiful venue in the city, and the result was magical. Round tables filled the space, each decorated with white roses and candles that cast a warm glow over the celebrating faces. "Where's Sarah?" Emma asked her mother for the 10th time, scanning the entrance hopefully. Maria Martinez smoothed her daughter's hair and smiled sadly. "You know your sister, mija. Her work takes her all over the world. She wanted to be here. David Chen approached with 2 champagne glasses, his smile bright but his eyes showing concern. As Emma's fiancé and also Agent Chen's son, he knew more about Sarah's real job than the family realized. His father had mentioned Sarah was on a critical mission, but he couldn't tell Emma the truth about what her sister really did for work. "She'll call later tonight," David assured Emma. "She wouldn't miss talking to you on such an important day." Across the room, Uncle Roberto was already telling embarrassing stories about Emma and Sarah as children, making everyone laugh. Cousins Maria and Isabella had driven in from San Antonio with their kids, and even Great-Aunt Carmen had made the trip from El Paso. The family had really come together for this celebration. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away, Sarah crouched behind a shipping container at the port of Bangkok. Her earpiece crackled with updates from her surveillance team. They'd been tracking a cargo ship that intelligence suggested was being used to transport trafficked women. "Target vessel is the Blue Paradise, Dock 7, whispered Agent Kim through the comm system. "Thermal imaging shows approximately 15 heat signatures in the lower cargo hold." Sarah's heart pounded. 15 women, possibly more. This was exactly what they'd been looking for. She adjusted her hidden camera and moved closer to the ship, staying in the shadows between the massive containers stacked around the port. Back at the Grand Oak Hall, the party was in full swing. Emma's best friend Jessica had just finished a touching maid of honor speech, and David's college buddies were telling stories about how he'd been talking about Emma since their first date. The dance floor was packed with relatives of all ages, from little cousins barely able to walk to grandparents showing off moves from their youth. "I wish Sarah could see this," Emma whispered to David as they swayed to their favorite song. David pulled her closer, feeling guilty about the secrets he was keeping. His phone had been buzzing all evening with messages from his father about the Bangkok operation. Something big was happening, but he couldn't leave Emma's side on their engagement night. At that exact moment, Sarah was climbing aboard the Blue Paradise. The ship seemed quiet, but she could hear muffled voices from below deck. She followed the sound, her camera recording everything as evidence. The narrow metal stairs creaked under her feet as she descended into the cargo hold. What she found there broke her heart and confirmed their worst fears. Young women, barely out of their teens, were huddled together in the cramped space. They looked scared, hungry, and hopeless. Most appeared to be from rural villages in Myanmar and Laos. Sarah's language training helped her understand their whispered conversations. They'd been promised jobs in restaurants but had been trapped for weeks. "I'm here to help," Sarah whispered in their language, showing them her hidden badge. "Stay quiet. Help is coming." She activated her emergency beacon to signal her team that she'd found the victims, but as she was documenting the scene, she heard heavy footsteps on the deck above. The traffickers were returning earlier than expected. Back at the engagement party, David's phone rang insistently. He glanced at the caller ID. It was his father, Agent Chen. David knew his dad would only interrupt the party if something was seriously wrong. "I'll be right back," he told Emma, stepping onto the venue's balcony to take the call. David listened carefully. His father's voice was tense. "The Bangkok operation has gone sideways. Sarah's team lost contact with her about an hour ago. We think she's been compromised." David's blood ran cold. "What do you need me to do?" "We're coordinating with local authorities, but there's something else. We intercepted communications suggesting this trafficking network has connections here in the States. They might know about our operation and could be planning retaliation." As if on cue, David noticed 3 black SUVs pulling up outside the Grand Oak Hall. Men in dark suits were getting out, and they didn't look like wedding guests. His father's voice continued through the phone, but David was already moving back, toward the party. "Dad, I think they're already here," David said, his voice tight with fear. Inside the hall, Emma was laughing at something her cousin had said when she noticed David rushing back toward their table, his face pale and serious. The music was still playing, the guests were still dancing, but something had shifted. She felt it in the way David was moving, in the tension that suddenly filled the air. "What's wrong?" she asked as he reached her. Before David could answer, The main doors of the Grand Oak Hall burst open. Armed men in tactical gear flooded in, shouting commands that sent the wedding guests into immediate panic. Screams filled the air as people dove under tables and grabbed their children. Emma stared in shock as the fairy tale engagement party she'd dreamed about turned into a nightmare. She had no idea that her sister's dangerous work on the other side of the world had just followed her home, bringing armed forces right to their family celebration. Chaos erupted inside the Grand Oak Hall as armed tactical officers spread throughout the venue. Emma's beautiful engagement party turned into a scene from an action movie, with guests screaming and diving behind overturned tables. Wedding decorations scattered across the floor as people scrambled for safety. "Everyone stay calm and keep your hands visible," shouted the lead officer through a megaphone. "This is a federal operation. No one will be harmed if you cooperate." Emma grabbed David's arm, her eyes wide with terror. "What's happening? Why? Are they here?" David pulled her behind the wedding cake table, his mind racing. Through his phone, he could still hear his father, Agent Chen, coordinating the response to Sarah's situation in Bangkok. Now it seemed like that same criminal network had reached their family celebration. Mrs. Martinez clutched her husband's hand as they crouched near the gift table. "Roberto, what did we do wrong? Why are the police here?" Uncle Roberto, who had been making toasts just minutes earlier, tried to comfort the frightened children huddled around them. Little cousins who had been laughing and dancing were now crying and asking where their parents were. The tactical team leader approached the main family table where David and Emma were hiding. His face was serious but not threatening. "Are you David Chen?" he asked. David nodded slowly, still protecting Emma behind him. "Your father sent us. We have reason to believe this location may be targeted by individuals connected to an international trafficking operation. We're here to ensure everyone's safety." Emma's mouth fell open. "Trafficking? David, what is he talking about?" Before David could explain, his phone rang again. It was Agent Chen with an update that made David's face go white. "Dad, you're on speaker. What's the situation?" Sarah managed to activate her emergency beacon before going dark. Agent Chen's voice crackled through the phone. "But we intercepted communications showing the trafficking network identified her as a federal agent. They're planning retaliation against her family to send a message to other investigators." Emma stared at David in shock. "Federal agent? Sarah? Works for a humanitarian organization." The tactical team leader nodded grimly. "Ma'am, your sister Sarah is an undercover operative who's been investigating human trafficking networks for 3 years. Tonight she discovered a major operation, but she's now missing and presumed captured." The room fell silent except for the confused whispers of family members trying to understand what was happening. Emma's perfect engagement party had revealed a secret that changed everything she thought she knew about her sister. Meanwhile, on the cargo ship in Bangkok, Sarah found herself tied up in a small storage room below deck. Her captors had discovered her recording equipment and emergency beacon before she could escape. Through the thin metal walls, she could hear them speaking in rapid Thai, planning their next moves. One of the traffickers, a man with a scar across his cheek, entered her makeshift prison. "You think you very smart, American agent," he said in broken English. "But now your family pay price for your interference." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "My family has nothing to do with this." The scarred man smiled cruelly and showed her a photograph on his phone. It was a surveillance photo of the Grand Oak Hall taken just hours earlier. Emma was visible in the picture, laughing with David outside the venue. Pretty sister getting married, yes? Would be shame if celebration. Interrupted. Sarah struggled against her restraints. "If you hurt them, I swear. You in no position to make threats," the man interrupted. "Your government friends will learn what happens when they interfere with our business." Back at the engagement party, the tactical team was setting up a secure perimeter around the venue. The family members were being interviewed one by one to understand any potential connections to Sarah's work that the criminals might exploit. Emma sat in a corner booth with David, trying to process everything. 3 years, she whispered. Sarah's been lying to us for 3 years. She was protecting you, David explained gently. If criminal organizations knew she had family, they could use you to get to her. That's exactly what's happening now. Mrs. Martinez approached their table, her face streaked with tears. David, your father explained some things to us. Is our Sarah really in danger? Before David could answer, Agent Chen himself walked into the hall, flanked by additional federal agents. His usually calm demeanor was strained as he surveyed the scene of his son's engagement party, turned into a federal operation. The situation in Bangkok is escalating, he announced to the room. We have teams moving to rescue Sarah, but we need to keep everyone here safe until we can neutralize the threat. Emma stood up suddenly, her engagement dress now wrinkled and her hair disheveled. I want to talk to my sister. That's not possible right now, Agent Chen replied carefully. She chose her mission over being here tonight, Emma said, her voice shaking with emotion. She chose to save strangers instead of celebrating with her family, and now those same strangers might hurt us because of her choices. The room went quiet. Everyone could feel the pain and confusion in Emma's words. David reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I understand you're upset, Agent Chen said softly. But your sister has saved dozens of young women who were being sold into slavery. Tonight she's risking her life to save 15 more. The work she does matters. Emma looked around the room at her family. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all caught up in a dangerous situation because of Sarah's secret life. The fairy lights still twinkled on the walls, but the magic of the evening was completely gone. I just wanted my sister at my engagement party, Emma whispered, tears falling onto her beautiful dress. I never wanted any of this. Outside, more federal vehicles were arriving. The Grand Oak Hall was now the center of an international crisis, and Emma's family was trapped in the middle of it all. The armed forces that had stormed their celebration were their protectors, but they were also a reminder of how dangerous Sarah's world really was. As Emma looked at the tactical officers positioned around the room, she realized her sister wasn't just missing a family party anymore. Sarah was fighting for her life, and their family celebration had become part of that same battle. Agent Chen stood in the center of the Grand Oak Hall, speaking quietly into his secure radio, while family members watched anxiously from their tables. The festive decorations seemed almost mocking now, fairy lights twinkling above a room filled with federal agents and frightened relatives. Bangkok team has visual on the cargo ship, he announced to the room. They're preparing to move in, but the situation is complicated. The traffickers know we're coming. Emma sat with her head in her hands, still wearing her engagement dress, but feeling like her world had completely changed. David rubbed her shoulders gently, trying to offer comfort while staying alert to the tactical situation developing around them. How long do we have to stay here? Asked Uncle Roberto, bouncing his youngest nephew on his lap to keep the child calm. Until we can guarantee your safety, Agent Chen replied. These people have shown they're willing to target families. We won't take any chances. 3,000 miles away, Sarah could hear increased activity on the ship's deck above her. Boots, running, shouted orders in multiple languages and the sound of weapons being prepared. Her captors were getting ready for a fight with the rescue team. The scarred man returned to her storage room prison, this time accompanied by 2 other traffickers. Your government friend's coming for you, he said with an ugly smile. But maybe we send them message first. He held up a sat phone and dialed a number. Sarah's heart sank as she realized what he was doing. At the Grand Oak Hall, Agent Chen's phone rang with an unfamiliar international number. The entire room went silent as he answered and put it on speaker. Agent Chen, came the accented voice through the phone. We have your operative. Perhaps we make deal, yes? Let me speak to Agent Martinez first, Chen demanded. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice came through clearly. Dad? Emma, are you all there? Emma jumped up from her chair. Sarah, are you okay? Where are you? I'm fine, Em. Listen to me carefully. Tonight was supposed to be about celebrating your engagement. I'm so sorry I'm not there with you. Don't apologize. Now, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. Just come home safe. The scarred man's voice cut back in. Very touching family moment. Now we discuss business. You call off your Bangkok operation, or sister has accident. Very sad accident. Agent Chen's jaw tightened. That's not how this works. Is exactly how this works, the trafficker replied. You have 15 minutes to withdraw your teams, or we start sending pieces of your agent back to you. The line went dead. The silence in the Grand Oak Hall was deafening. Emma stared at Agent Chen in horror. You have to do what they say. You have to save my sister. If we back down now, those 15 women on that ship will disappear forever, Chen explained, gently. And Sarah knows that. She wouldn't want us to abandon them. I don't care about those other women, Emma shouted, her voice cracking. I care about Sarah. She's my sister. Mrs. Martinez put her arms around Emma. Mija, your sister chose this work because she cares about all the daughters and sisters who need help. She chose it over us. Emma sobbed. She chose it over being here tonight, and now she might die because of it. David stood up and addressed the room. My father is right. If we give in to these demands, we're telling every criminal organization that they can control federal operations by threatening families. Sarah knows that. On the cargo ship, Sarah was thinking the same thing. She could hear the Bangkok harbor, police boats approaching through the porthole in her storage room. Her rescue team was close, but her captors were getting more desperate by the minute. The scarred man returned with a knife. Your family very stubborn. Maybe we help them understand situation better. Sarah looked him directly in the eyes. Before you do anything stupid, you should know something about my family. What is that? My sister Emma is getting engaged tonight to David Chen. His father is Agent Chen, the man you just spoke to. You're not just threatening some random federal agent's family. You're threatening the family of the man running this entire operation. The trafficker's confident expression faltered slightly. Sarah continued. Agent Chen has been hunting your organization for 5 years. He's the one who identified your shipping routes, your financial networks, your safe houses. You just gave him a personal reason to destroy everything you've built. Back at the Grand Oak Hall, Agent Chen was coordinating with the Bangkok operation through his earpiece. Strike Team Alpha is in position. They have eyes on the target vessel. Emma grabbed his arm. Please, just tell me, can they save her? Agent Chen looked at this young woman whose engagement party had turned into an international crisis. Your sister is one of our best operatives. She's survived situations like this before. But I won't lie to you, it's dangerous. Through his earpiece, they could all hear the Bangkok team leader. We have movement on deck. Subjects appear to be preparing to move the hostage, requesting permission to engage. Emma held her breath. David took her hand. The entire family stood frozen, waiting for Agent Chen's decision. What about the women they're trafficking? Emma asked suddenly. The 15 you mentioned. Agent Chen looked surprised by her question. If something happens to Sarah, those women still need to be saved, don't they? Emma's voice was shaky but determined. That's what Sarah would want. Agent Chen nodded slowly. Yes, that's exactly what she'd want. Emma looked around the room at her family, grandparents, parents, cousins. Everyone gathered for what should have been the happiest night of her life. How they were all part of something much bigger and more dangerous. Then save them all, she whispered. Save Sarah and save those 15 women. Don't let the bad guys win. Agent Chen spoke into his earpiece. Bangkok team, you are cleared to engage. Bring our agent home and get those victims to safety. As the tactical assault began 3,000 miles away, Emma realized that her sister hadn't just missed their family celebration for a mission. Sarah had brought them all into the mission, and now they were part of the fight to stop the traffickers who hurt innocent people. The armed forces that had stormed their hall weren't just protecting them. They were all working together to save lives and bring Sarah home. The sound of gunfire crackled through Agent Chen's earpiece, causing everyone in the Grand Oak Hall to freeze in terror. Emma gripped David's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white as they listened to the tactical assault happening 3,000 miles away in Bangkok. Alpha team moving to secure the cargo hold, came the voice of the strike team leader through the radio. Multiple hostiles on deck. Repeat, multiple hostiles engaged. Mrs. Martinez began praying quietly in Spanish while Uncle Roberto gathered the younger children closer to him, trying to distract them from the frightening sounds coming through the communication system. On the cargo ship, Sarah heard the tactical team breach the upper deck. The scarred man who had been threatening her looked panicked as shouts and gunfire erupted above them. He grabbed his weapon and headed for the door. "You stay quiet, or everyone dies," he snarled at Sarah before disappearing up the stairs. Sarah worked frantically at the ropes binding her hands. During her training, she'd learned how to escape from restraints, but it took time and concentration. The sounds of the firefight above made her desperate to break free and help rescue the trafficked women she'd found earlier. Back at the engagement party, Agent Chen pressed his earpiece closer, trying to make sense of the chaotic radio chatter. "Bangkok team, what's your status on the hostage?" "Still searching lower decks," came the reply between bursts of gunfire. "Ship is larger than we expected. Multiple cargo holds to clear." Emma paced frantically in her engagement dress, which now felt ridiculous given the life-or-death situation. Why is it taking so long? Can't they just find her? David tried to explain the complexity of shipboard operations, but Emma wasn't listening. She was staring at the tactical officers positioned around their family celebration, realizing that her sister lived in this world of danger and violence every single day. "I was angry at her for missing tonight," Emma said quietly. "But she does this all the time. She risks everything to save people she doesn't even know." Her grandmother, Carmen, who had been quiet throughout the crisis, spoke up from her corner table. "Your sister has a good heart, Mia. Sometimes good hearts make hard choices." On the cargo ship, Sarah finally freed her hands just as she heard footsteps returning to the lower deck. But these weren't her captors. These were tactical boots moving in formation. She heard English being spoken in controlled, professional voices. "Clear left corridor. Moving to cargo hold 3. Sarah banged on her storage room door. "Federal agent in here, Sarah Martinez." The door burst open to reveal a Bangkok tactical officer in full gear. "Agent Martinez? Are you injured?" "I'm fine, but there are trafficking victims in cargo hold 2. 15 women, maybe more. They need immediate medical attention." The officer spoke into his radio. "Package secured, moving to extract additional victims from hold 2. Back at the Grand Oak Hall, Agent Chen's face broke into the first smile anyone had seen all evening. "Bangkok team reports Agent Martinez is secure and unharmed. They're now evacuating the trafficking victims." The entire room erupted in cheers and tears of relief. Emma collapsed into David's arms, sobbing with joy and exhaustion. Mrs. Martinez hugged her husband while Uncle Roberto picked up his nephew and spun him around. But their celebration was interrupted by Agent Chen's radio, crackling with urgent updates. "Sir, we have a problem. Local police report suspicious vehicles moving toward known safe houses connected to the trafficking network. They may be planning additional retaliation." The reality hit everyone at once. Rescuing Sarah was only part of the crisis. The trafficking organization was still dangerous, and they were angry. "How many safe houses are we talking about?" Agent Chen asked into his radio. "At least 6 locations across the city. Could be holding additional victims." Emma looked up from David's embrace, her face streaked with tears but her expression determined. "The women Sarah found. Are they safe now?" Agent Chen nodded. 15 women are being evacuated to safety. They're free because of your sister's work." "And how many more are still trapped?" Emma pressed. "We don't know yet, maybe dozens." Emma stood up and smoothed down her engagement dress. "Then the mission isn't over, is it?" Agent Chen looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Sarah chose to save those 15 women instead of coming to my party. But if there are more women who need help, then her job isn't finished." Emma's voice grew stronger. "What can we do to help?" David stared at his fiancée in amazement. "Emma, you don't understand how dangerous. I understand that my sister has been fighting monsters for 3 years while I worried about wedding cakes and flower arrangements," Emma interrupted. "I understand that 15 families will get their daughters back because Sarah was brave enough to miss my engagement party." Agent Chen's radio crackled again. "Sir, Agent Martinez is requesting permission to join the safe house raids. She knows." the locations and can identify additional victims. Emma looked directly at Agent Chen. Don't you dare tell her no. Agent Martinez has been through a traumatic experience tonight, Chen began. Agent Martinez just proved she's exactly where she needs to be, Emma said firmly. And we're going to support her from here. Mrs. Martinez approached her daughter with pride in her eyes. Emma, what are you thinking? I'm thinking that Sarah's work is family business now. We can't help her fight the bad guys, but we can make sure she knows her family supports her mission completely. Emma turned to address the room full of relatives and tactical officers. My sister missed our celebration to save 15 women from slavery. I think that makes tonight even more special than an engagement party. Great Aunt Carmen clapped slowly from her corner. That girl has grown up wise. Agent Chen spoke into his radio. Bangkok team, tell Agent Martinez her family says to finish the job. We'll be here when she gets home. Through the crackling radio, they could hear Sarah's voice clearly. Tell Emma I promise to make it up to her. And tell her I'm proud to be her sister. Emma wiped her tears and smiled for the first time since the armed forces had stormed their celebration. Tell her when she gets home, we're throwing her the biggest hero's welcome party this family has ever seen. The Grand Oak Hall was still surrounded by federal agents. The engagement party was still interrupted by an international crisis, but somehow the evening had transformed into something more meaningful than Emma had ever imagined. Her sister hadn't missed the family celebration after all. She had brought them all into the most important mission of their lives. 2 weeks later, the Grand Oak Hall was decorated once again, but this time the celebration was even more special than Emma's engagement party had been. Colorful banners reading, "Welcome Home Hero," hung from the ceiling, and tables were filled, with Sarah's favorite foods prepared by the entire extended family. Sarah Martinez walked through the doors wearing a simple sundress instead of tactical gear, her face showing the exhaustion of her recent ordeal, but her eyes bright with joy. The entire family erupted in cheers as she entered, with little cousins running to hug her legs and aunts competing to feed her homemade tamales. This is way better than my engagement party, Emma said, wrapping her sister in the longest hug of their lives. I'm so sorry I missed it, Em, Sarah whispered into her sister's hair. Don't you dare apologize. Emma pulled back to look at her. You were exactly where you needed to be. The past 2 weeks had changed everything for the Martinez family. After Sarah's rescue, the Bangkok operation had led to raids on 6 safe houses across Southeast Asia, resulting in the rescue of 43 additional trafficking victims. The criminal network had been completely dismantled, and several high-ranking traffickers were now in international custody. Agent Chen approached the sisters with David beside him. Sarah, I have some updates you'll want to hear. The women from the ship? Sarah asked immediately. All 15 have been reunited with their families in Myanmar and Laos. The youngest, a girl named Mimi, who reminded you of Emma, asked me to give you this. He handed Sarah a handmade bracelet woven from colorful threads. A small note was attached in broken English. Thank you for bringing me home to my sister. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she tied the bracelet around her wrist. Mrs. Martinez bustled over with a plate piled high with food. Enough work talk. Tonight we celebrate that our daughter is home safe. Actually, Mom, there's something Sarah and I need to discuss with the family, Emma said, taking her sister's hand. The room gradually quieted as family members gathered around. Uncle Roberto turned down the music while Great Aunt Carmen settled into her favorite chair with her traditional glass of horchata. Sarah looked nervous. I know these past 2 weeks have been difficult for everyone. Having your family celebration turned into a federal operation isn't exactly normal. Nothing about our family is exactly normal, Uncle Roberto called out, making everyone laugh. Emma squeezed Sarah's hand encouragingly. Tell them what we talked about. Sarah took a deep breath. I've been offered a promotion that would bring me back to the States permanently. I'd be training new operatives and coordinating domestic operations. No more undercover missions overseas. The family began to cheer, but Sarah held up her hand. The thing is, I've spent 3 years lying to all of you about what I do. I told myself it was to protect you, but really, it was because I was scared you wouldn't understand why I chose this work over being present for family events. Emma stepped forward. We understand now. We saw what you do, and we're proud of you. That night when armed forces stormed Emma's party, I realized something. Sarah continued. The work I do doesn't have to separate me from my family. It can bring us closer together if I'm honest about it. David nodded. That's why Emma has a proposal for you. Emma grinned and pulled out a folder. I've been researching organizations that support families of federal agents. There are support groups, volunteer opportunities, and ways for us to help with the work you do. You want to get involved in anti-trafficking work? Sarah asked, surprised. We want to get involved in supporting you, Mrs. Martinez corrected. If this work is important to you, then it's important to all of us. Great Aunt Carmen raised her glass. Your sister saved 43 young women in 2 weeks. That makes this whole family very proud. Agent Chen, who had been quietly observing the family discussion, stepped forward. There's actually something else. The State Department wants to honor Agent Martinez for her work on the Bangkok operation. There will be a ceremony in Washington, D.C. next month, and they've specifically requested that her entire family be present. Sarah looked around the room at all the faces she loved. You mean, for once, my work and my family can be in the same place at the same time? Not just the same place, Emma said with a huge smile. We'll be there to celebrate you and everything you've accomplished. Little cousin Miguel, who was only 8 years old, raised his hand like he was in school. Tia Sarah, does this mean you're going to keep fighting the bad guys? Sarah knelt down to his level. Yes, mijo, but now I'm going to do it from home, where I can have dinner with the family every Sunday. And you'll come to my birthday party? He asked hopefully. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Sarah promised. The celebration continued late into the evening. Family members shared stories, danced to music that ranged from traditional Mexican folk songs to Emma's favorite pop hits, and made plans for supporting Sarah's continued work in law enforcement. As the night wound down, Emma and Sarah found themselves alone on the venue's balcony, looking out at the city lights. Both sisters were still wearing their party dresses, but now they felt like they truly had something to celebrate. I owe you an apology, Emma said quietly. That night when everything happened, I said some awful things about you choosing strangers over family. You were scared and confused, Sarah replied. I don't blame you for being angry. But I was wrong. You didn't choose strangers over us. You chose to protect people who couldn't protect themselves, and that's exactly the kind of person I want my sister to be. Sarah hugged Emma tightly. When I was tied up on that ship, all I could think about was how much I regretted missing your engagement party. Not because I made the wrong choice, but because I hadn't found a way to include my family in the work that means everything to me. Well, now you don't have to choose anymore, Emma said. Your mission is our mission. Those 43 women you helped save, they're part of our family story now too. Inside the hall, David was helping pack up leftover food while Agent Chen coordinated with the security detail. The past 2 weeks had strengthened not just the Martinez family bonds, but also the partnership between law enforcement and the communities they served. You know, David said to his father, I think Emma's right. When Sarah comes back to work domestically, having family support will make her even more effective. Agent Chen nodded. Family motivation is powerful. Tonight proved that when people understand what we're fighting for, they become part of the solution. As the evening ended, Sarah looked around the Grand Oak Hall one more time. 2 weeks ago, armed forces had stormed this venue to protect her family from dangerous criminals. Tonight, the same venue hosted a celebration of everything those forces had accomplished together. The fairy lights still twinkled on the walls, but now they illuminated something different than Emma's engagement party. They lit up a family that had discovered they were stronger together than apart, and a sister who had learned that missing family celebrations for important missions didn't mean choosing between love and duty. Sarah fingered the bracelet that Mimi had made for her, thinking about the young woman who was now safely home with her own sister in Myanmar. 43 families had been reunited because Sarah had chosen to miss one family party. But now, thanks to Emma's understanding and the family's support, Sarah would never have to make that choice again. "Ready to go home?" Emma asked, linking arms with her sister. "More ready than I've ever been," Sarah replied. As they walked out of the Grand Oak Hall together, Sarah realized that the armed forces hadn't just stormed their family celebration that night. They had revealed that the Martinez family was already part of something bigger than any single party or mission. They were part of the fight for justice, and they would face it together from now on. The mission that had once separated Sarah from her family had ultimately brought them closer than ever before, and that was worth celebrating every single day.